Hello, my name is Alicia Mashla, and this is my Lab 6 Comparative Animal Anatomy between a rat and a frog. So, some common rat background is a kingdom is Animalia, phylum Chordata, class Mammalia, order Rodentia, family Muridae, genus Rattus, and species Arnivicus. The ecological habitats for the common rat include a variety of areas such as woodlands, basements, open fields, garbage dumps, and sewers. Some biotic factors include vegetable/plant life, mice, and insects. And some abiotic factors include broken down habitats, places of surface cover, hotter temperatures, high noise, and light pollution. The common rat is a primary consumer on the food chain as they're labeled as omnivores. They eat mice, insects, plants, fruits, seeds, etc. And for other animals such as owls and cats, they're considered their food source and labeled as secondary consumers. The common rat is a species who has multiple mates, not just one. This species does not have a mating period, but it mates all year round. And rats typically have a 22 to 24 carrying period, then produce a clutch of about 8 offspring. And rats create nests in groups with other females to help better care for the offspring as it's too hard to do alone. The common rat is a nocturnal animal where they're active at night / early morning and usually hide during the day. And when threatened, rats have an aggressive behavior that leads to biting, chasing, fighting, etc. Some common frog background: the kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, class Amphibia, order Anera, family Ranidae, genus Rana, and species Rana temporaria. The ecological habitat for a common frog includes forests, rivers, and marshes. Some biotic factors include cannibalism and predators such as insects, snakes, and birds. Abiotic factors include water, air, and rocks. The frog is a secondary consumer on the food chain as they're carnivores and rely on insects, which are primary consumers for their food. And frogs are often consumed by tertiary consumers like snakes. The common frog only spawn about once a year during the spring using a special technique called which is like a mating hug called amplexus to produce offspring. This is where the male frog fertilizes the eggs as the female frog lays on them. And this process can last up to a few hours to even days. And offspring take about 8 to 10 days to hatch, but cold weather may kill the spawn, so frogs typically try to not lay their eggs in any type of shallow water. The frog is nocturnal, as they're mostly active at night, and this is why they actually have bulging eyes, which are extremely sensitive and provide them with night vision. In addition, they also hibernate in the wintertime, usually in pond mud, under rotting leaves, logs, or underneath stones. This is the common rat dissection. On the left is the dissection conducted in class, and on the right, I have provided a diagram to help you understand what's going on. As you can see on the left side, it's kind of hard to tell what is what, and that's why I included a diagram. And I did the same thing for the frog. On the left is a dissection class, and on the right is the anatomy of a frog that I found to help understand the anatomy of this frog. Starting with the digestive system of the rat, this consists of the liver, esophagus, stomach, pancreas, small intestine, appendix, large intestine, and the anus. The liver is a reddish brown orange organ that is located underneath the diaphragm. This is what produces bile, which aids in the digestion of fats and stores glycogen. And this turns the waste into less harmful substances. This is actually different from any other species because rats don't have a gallbladder, which is commonly used for storing bile in other animals. The esophagus is a tube that runs through the rat's diaphragm and moves the food from the mouth to the stomach. You can distinguish the esophagus from the trachea due to its lack of cartilage rings. The rat's stomach is located on the right side, underneath the liver. This organ stores and breaks down food and digests proteins. And it's located between the esophagus, and it has a cardiac sphincter, which is an opening where the food is then swept into the which is which is where the food is swept into the stomach through the use of rhythmic peristaltic waves. The pancreas is a thin white granular membrane located beneath the stomach, which produces digestive enzymes that are then sent to the intestine through the pancreatic duct. The small intestine is this small, slender coiled tube that receives partially digested food from the stomach through the pyloric sphincter. This intestine consists of three sections: the duodenum, ileum, and jejunum. The duodenum and jejunum connects to the stomach and helps to further digest the food and absorbs its nutrients and any water it has. The ileum, excuse me, empties what's left of the food into the colon. The appendix is this small pouch that's connected to the small and large intestine. And this is where food is temporarily stored while bacteria help to digest the cellulose that is found in any plants that the rat may have eaten. The large intestine is a large greenish tube that extends from the small intestine and leads to the anus. This is where what's left of any water or salts from the previously digested food gets further digested. And lastly, the anus. This is the final part of the digestive system where the rat's body excretes this waste. For the common frog digestive system, it's practically the same as the rat, except the mouth is well for any digestive system, this is where it's going to begin. But the frog's mouth contains teeth on the upper jaw, but these are practically useless as when they catch their prey, they just swallow it right away. And in addition, they also have an extremely long, sticky tongue that helps to catch its prey. Um, as well as for the esophagus, frogs do not have a diaphragm. And so the esophagus is just a tube that moves the food from the mouth to the stomach, but there's no diaphragm surrounding it. So the common rat excretory system consists of the kidney, ureter, urinary bladder, and the urethra. The kidneys are these large bean-like structures that are located in the back of the abdominal cavity on either side of the rat's spine. They act as filters and rid the body of any waste or any type of toxic substances. The ureter is a tube that connects the kidney to the bladder. This is where it transports the waste to the bladder. The bladder is this sac that is located behind the pubic bone. It is used to store urine before the rat's body is ready to expel it. But then the urethra is this tube that's connected to the bladder, which then the urine travels through to be expelled from the rat's body. For the frog, everything's the same with the kidney, ureter, and urinary bladder, except they have a cloaca, which is this urinary tract. And this is where any type of solid waste leaves the large intestine and it passes into this tract where it will then leave the frog's body. And this is actually very important as well in the reproductive system, which I will talk about um, later. So, starting with the rat's reproductive system, for the males, they consist of the testes, epidermis, vas deferens, seminal vesicles, and the prostate gland. The testes are the testes are located in the scrotal sac. These are two oval-shaped organs that produce sperm, androgens, and hormones. The epidermis is a coiled tube located on the surface of the testes, where sperm cells are collected and stored. The vas deferens is another tube that connects the epidermis to the urethra, where it carries the sperm through the penis and out of the rat's body. The seminal vesicles are these lumpy brown glands located to the left and the right of the urinary bladder, and they produce and store fluid before it becomes semen. And lastly, for the male, the prostate gland is a gland that aids the seminal vesicles in secreting the materials to help form semen. Moving on to the females, they consist of a vagina, uterus, or uterine horns, ovaries, and oviducts. The vagina is a short gray tube that lies dorsal to the urinary bladder. This serves both as a birth canal and an orifice for mating. The uterus/uterine horns are located where the vagina divides into two and allows several fetuses to develop. This is also known as a duplex uterus, and this is very common in other animals, since it can accommodate for multiple embryos and create a litter. Ovaries are these small lumpy glands located at the top of the uterine horns. These glands release egg cells into the oviducts, and these oviducts are what connects to the ovaries and where the embryo transfers to the uterus. And this is often considered as the site of fertilization in many animals. Moving on to the frog reproductive system, it is all pretty much the same, except for as you can see, they don't have the rat doesn't have a cloaca. So for the male, they have the testes, sperm ducts, and cloaca. The testes and sperm ducts are practically the same as a rat, but the sperm ducts take the male sex cells and transfer it to the cloaca, which moves the sperm outside of the frog's body. And for the female, this is all pretty much the same, except for they don't have uterine horns, as that's only in rats, and they all have the cloaca that expels the eggs outside the body. So both the male and the female use the cloaca to expel their sex cells outside of their body. Moving on to the circulatory system. For the common rat, this consists of the heart, aorta, a superior vena cava, pulmonary artery, left atrium, left ventricle, and the spleen. The heart is the organ that's located between the lungs, and this circulates blood and oxygen throughout the rat's entire body. The aorta is the large artery connected to the heart, and this carries oxygen-rich blood from the left ventricle of the heart to the other parts of the rat's body. And the superior vena cava is connected to the heart and is on the left and right. Is on the left and the right, whereas blood is conducted from the upper part of this body to the right atrium. The pulmonary artery is an artery that connects the heart to the lungs. It carries blood from the right side of the heart to the lungs. And the left atrium is a section of the heart that receives oxygenated blood from the lungs and pumps it into the left ventricle, while the right atrium is a section of the heart that receives deoxygenated blood and contracts and forces it into the right ventricle. The left ventricle is a section of the heart that pumps the oxygen-rich blood through the aortic valve to the rest of the body, while the right ventricle is a section of the heart that pumps the oxygen-poor blood to the lungs through the pulmonary valve. Lastly, the spleen is this banana-shaped reddish-orange organ that's attached to the outer margin of the stomach, known as the greater curvature, and is responsible for blood storage and the destruction of any type of blood cells. So, for the common frog, this is probably the most important section of the frog's uh, anatomy, as they do consist of a heart, a single ventricle, and arteries. So the heart is the organ that's located between the lungs and circulates the blood and oxygen throughout the entire body. But a frog's heart has two upper chambers, the right and left, just like any other, the right and left atrium, just like any other animal. But it only has one lower chamber, so no left or right ventricle, like here in the rat. Instead, they only have a single ventricle. And this is a section of the heart that pumps not only oxygen rich blood, but also oxygen poor blood. And due to this, um, ox- oxygen poor blood is kept in that ventricle by blood vessels. And then it sends that oxygen poor blood to any other tissues within the body, while it takes the oxygen rich blood and sends it to arteries, where it keeps flowing throughout the frog's body. Moving on to the nervous system. For the common rat, it consists of the brain, spinal cords, and cranial nerves. The rat's brain is what controls its thoughts, memory, motor skills, emotion, touch, vision, breathing, temperature, hunger, and thirst. And the spinal cord is this long bundle of nerves and neurons that runs along the back of the rat's body, and it's what connects the brain and carries the signals to the rest of its body. The cranial nerves are these nerves that help the rat to see, smell, and hear. And since these nerves are cranial, they help control muscle movements in the head and neck. For the frog, it's basically the same, as they have brain, cranial nerves, except frogs only have 10 cranial nerves, while other species, such as humans, have 12. And in addition, as I did some research, in the rat, in the brain, the medulla is what regulates the automatic functions such as digestion and respiration, and the body posture of the frog and muscular coordination are controlled by the cerebellum. In a frog, this cerebellum is very small, and in comparison to other species such as humans, it's very large, as it's very important for many other processes. And in addition, for frogs' sense of smell, it's registered through the olfactory lobes, and this is towards the front side of the frog's body. Common rat locomotion is that rats use their legs and paws to move around, and they have the sort of like a swimming like movement characterized by abduction, rotation, and hyperextension of their paws. For frogs locomotion, frogs move by leaping, and this is why they have a long, strong hind limbs that, when straightened, they're able to leap pretty high. And these are my works cited, and thank you for listening.